All right. Good morning and happy Friday to each and every one of you. Thank you so much. I have the honor of having Mr. Lewis McGraw here. Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome back, by the way.
Thank
Welcome
you.
back.
Thanks. It's good to be back.
Yeah, yeah, yes.
Really is. It
Yeah,
really
yeah,
is.
yeah. When I met you the first time, there was just something about you that it resonated, and you just connect and vibe with everyone, and it showed in family reunion just the intensity of who you are. So how real estate works. So
It-
Lewis, take us back to I think you started your real estate career back in 2002,
yeah,
right?
yeah. So I was living in Oklahoma in 2001. I'd moved out there from here.
Yeah.
I worked for American Airlines at the time.
Okay.
And when we got ready to sell our house to come back out, the gentleman that was our realtor he lived behind us. And it was a
Yeah.
disaster, the reason how we met. He says, "Oh, you're going out to California. You should really get into real estate. You got a great personality. You already teach and this and that." And I was like, "Yeah, whatever." So I get out here and it just hit me. I said, "I got to
Yeah.
get into real estate." And there was a few guys at the hangar doing it.
Yeah.
So I started out with Shorewood Realtors,
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I was at the Hermosa office. Had a good time. Um, I didn't feel that I got the support there from what he was telling, because I kind of used him as a mentor. And he says, "Well, you should be doing this, should be doing that." So I left there and went to a company called Bankers. I think it was Bankers Realty.
Bankers Realty. Yeah.
Yeah. So they had about 5, 6 offices here in Southern California.
Yeah.
And then I partnered up with a guy and we went out on our own and we opened a franchise. And it was a discount brokerage franchise. And what I learned by that was it taught us the systems, because everything, that's when I first heard about a system.
Right.
And the system it taught us. But what I was at my dentist office, and this was my aha moment for where I realized a few years later that I not made a mistake, because we did a lot of business. I've met a lot of people. It really
Yeah.
propelled us. But he was selling his practice. And he said, in selling my practice, he says, my value is because they were going through all of his books. And he says, the value is in my database. It's my contacts that they're buying, not
Right.
necessarily the building.
Mm.
And I was thinking about the discount brokerage that we had at the time, and everybody, I mean, we were doing 10, 20 deals a month locally.
Yeah.
And then when we would take the real estate investing tours, which we were talking about, we'd do 40, 50 houses in a weekend, right?
Yeah.
But the problem is everybody was buying and leaving the state. So we didn't have that referral in state anymore. We didn't have the family to keep in touch because they were all moving.
Yeah.
And that's when I said, oh, so that's when I started researching. I was doing an open house and I ran into a guy named Peter Trice.
Mr. Peter Trice. Yes.
Trice walked into my open house.
Wow.
And we talked for about, I want to say, he left. He came back, and we probably talked for 2 hours.
Amazing.
And he said, "You got to come to KW, man."
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm on my way." So I brought just about every agent that we had. The mortgage company we divested at the time, but I brought most of the agents with me, and I loved it. I loved it, and that's when I went to my first family reunion. Was in 2007, and I was like, I was in Vegas and I had a party. I had a great time.
It's definitely an eye opener,
Yeah.
family reunion. For people that have not been to family reunion, I would encourage all of you to at least give it one opportunity to go. It's amazing. The collaboration, the networking, and just the breakout sessions, and just to see amazing keynote speakers as well, right? It's just it's like a rock band out there, just doing
in 4 days. It's a rave.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. Wow, I didn't know that. I didn't know that Mr.
Pete Trice.
Pete Trice was the one that ultimately got you out of
yeah.
Now, was it when they were here already at the Torrance office, or was it the Redondo?
It was the Redondo office.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
okay, so that was early before even the establishment here.
So he asked me, he says, "Come on down. I'd like to introduce you, take a walk through, whatever." And I went down there, and as soon as I walked in the office, I was sold.
Yeah.
And the discount brokerage worked, that business model worked for us at the time. But what I've learned is there's cycles that you can't control.
Yeah.
Right. Those cycles and trends, they're beyond anyone's control. And so what you have to do is not necessarily prepare yourself, but you have to prepare your business.
Sure.
Right. Your mindset. My kids would come downstairs every day and I'd check, they'd, "Mama, stop, check your TFAR." Right. And so they're like, "What's a TFAR?" I said, "Your thoughts, feelings dictate your actions, which gives you your results. check your
Love that.
TFR, right? Your
Yeah.
thoughts, feelings, actions equal to your results. So go back upstairs, check yourself, and come back. And they're
Yeah.
like, Dad, you're too intense. But it became a game.
Yeah.
So, they'd come downstairs and you just carry that through life. And, there's traffic. You're going to get cut off. You're going to miss a light. Don't let that affect your day. You're not going to have a bad day. You're having a bad moment, right?
Right.
And that's where you got to look at life. That's where you definitely have to look at your business.
Yeah.
When your family member lists their house with the friend, you're like, but we're cousins. You're my mom. Whatever it is, people have to understand that's just a part of life. That's a learning something about you they didn't trust, or you just got to get through that.
Yeah.
And it's all about the way you think.
I love what you said, Louis, about, because all of us have our tough moments, right? But I love how you said it. It's not a tough day, but it's a tough moment,
Yeah.
right? And it resonates with me because the hurdles and challenges that we have as real estate entrepreneurs, right? We want our transactions to go as smooth as
Right.
possible, but
Right.
there's going to be hurdles,
Yeah.
there's going to be challenges, there's going to be obstacles and walls that you're going to hit, right? But it's knowing how to maneuver those, right? And get to the finish line.
Yeah.
So I love what you said about that. So awesome.
Yeah.
So you came in real estate during the craziness of the market going up.
Yep. Yep.
Because in 2002, 2003, 4, and 5, that was when everyone had a real estate license.
Yeah. When
right?
the cops would pull you over, they would ask you for your real estate license, not your driver's license. That was the deal.
Exactly. Yeah, but it was so true. There was a flux of licensees that just came into getting the real estate license. So yeah, I remember because I was in real estate during that time, and people were just doing really well during that time.
Yeah.
Now let's kind of dive into the threshold of 2008. How was that, and how did it impact you?
So leading up to that, in 2000, I used to do they call them cash flow 101 games. So this is how I started my investment club, my real estate investment club.
Yeah.
And so I would go to I'd look around and how do I set this up, right? And back then the thing was, the internet wasn't as big as it is now as far as Instagram and TikTok, right? So we started. It was a portal we could advertise on, and people came to our cash flow 101 games. And I would use the Sizzler because if I had more than 10 people come and buy dinner, they'd give me the room for free. So we'd have 20, 30 people in there playing cash flow for a couple hours. And then at the end, we'd start slowly pitching them about real estate and getting their finances in order and everything as the Get Board game talked about. And then we started turning these people into buyers and investors, right?
Yeah.
So that's where the larger 80, 90 member meetings I would have twice a month would happen. One of those guys that I sold real estate to, he came up to me after one of the meetings. I need you to come to my office tomorrow. I was like, okay, which guy? So I'll check my schedule. He says, I have someone I want you to meet. And this guy was the manager for these charter schools. That was just, and at the time, charter schools were just going mad, just crazy. They were just trying to get them in. Sandra Bullock is big into them. I mean, there's a lot of people that are just really pushing charter schools, and they do good. They do good. And so I became a representative for those guys, and I started buying churches and commercial buildings for them.
Amazing.
And that was 2007 going into 2008.
Yeah.
And some we would have to lease, but the criteria was very strict. The locations were very strict. And so in doing that, it pulled me away from the residential side because the commercial side was just, one deal took me, 14 months to close. And it was a done deal from day one, but it took 14 months every day, So when you start testing your drive, your why, which they talked about a lot at family reunion, what's your why? Why are you here? Why do you want to do this? What's your purpose? For me, it was the challenge of the deal, it was to get that deal done. And so going into 2008, I was not insulated from anything else, from anybody, because as that market started to shift, the charter schools started to shift too, right? The buildings were no longer for sale, they were for lease, and this was philanthropy money. This was all, big money. And it just started to shift. it didn't really affect me personally until about 2010 because we were developing out of state. And I think that's that out of state developing. We were building duplexes and four because we got it when we were selling so many of them. We just got in on it.
Yeah.
And 2009, 2010 was when, there was a book I was reading and it's in there. The guy says, it doesn't matter how much money you have. When the federal government wants the market to turn, it's going to turn. And you're
got no control over that, right?
and you can't hang on for the ride, brother.
And
so I finally had to raise the flag, and I did. It took me down a little bit for about a year and a half, and I had to mentally go back to all my training. I remember I was at a conference. It was a speakers conference in Florida, and I ended up spending the afternoon with Mark Victor Hansen, which I thought was just amazing. He wrote the 1 minute, and he sat there and talked to me about the things that he had gone through.
Yeah.
And how he was pulling back out of that. And, for somebody just to, I'm just walking by and say, hey, I read your book like 10 times. Like, come on, have lunch with me, And
amazing.
It was just great. And so sometimes that mentor, and Keller Williams is big on the mentorship.
Yeah.
And some people say, I can't afford it. It's like, it's not that you can't afford it. It's like, you can't afford not to have it.
That's right.
Cancel that Starbucks. When I would talk to people about saving and how are they going to get to the next step, I said, if you take every Starbucks and those double eggs that you buy there and you multiply that, you will see how much money you are wasting,
Yeah.
And one of, in some of the coaching that I did in the past, I had people write down 100 goals. And they're like, I get to number 5 and I can't think of anything. Keep writing.
Yeah.
Keep writing. You know, 1 through 3, 1 through 4, that's superficial.
Yeah.
I want to lose weight. I want to work out. I want to eat healthy. Talk to me when you get to number 25. Talk to me when you get to number 30.
That's right.
That's when the goals and you start realizing what you're doing with your life.
Yeah.
That's what helped me from the 2008 crisis carry on.
Yeah.
Before that, I had met a guy down in San Diego. He's an attorney, a foreclosure attorney. He's the one that taught me how to buy foreclosures, research title and all that stuff. And he was talking, to me or speaking, and he said, this cycle, he says, I've followed this thing since the 1800s.
Really? 1800s, huh?
And he said, so he says, when you look at it and you see what the interest rates do, and you see what takes down the economy and what builds the economy and how the market and the wars and the oil and all this stuff is, he says, you'll stop worrying about the market because you can't do anything about it. You just have to see and know that it's coming and know how to shift your business.
Yeah.
And so you look at things that people were doing 10 years ago, they're not doing today. Right. Things that we're doing today, we're not going to be doing 5 years from now. The internet, AI, 5 years from now, it's not going to be the same. So that marketplace change. Luxury is going to be luxury, but how you attract those buyers and stay with those buyers is going to be different.
Yeah. You have a valid point because Gary Keller created a book called The Shift. And it talks about markets that shift, right? We saw it in 2008. We saw it again in 2020.
Yep.
And I remember when I started my real estate career back in the mid 90s too, there was a little bit of a shift into the transition of 2000. And, it didn't matter what the market was going to do what it was going to do, right? But we needed to know how to pivot and maneuver and persevere, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's where a lot of agents kind of miss it.
Yeah.
Is because they give up too soon.
Yes.
Instead of saying, you know what, let's do one more. It's like the Nike slogan, right? Just do it, right?
Yeah.
I just think of it of a slogan is just one more. Just one more door knock. Just one more door cold calling. Just one more connecting with someone, right? Just one more, because you just never know. You might be right in the cusp. Right, of getting someone that says, hey, yeah, I'm ready to buy, I'm ready to sell, I'm ready to invest, I'm ready to develop, right? And that's where the mindset comes into play, right? Because it's a muscle. It's like working out each and every single day, right?
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned door knocking. When I first got on, I was at Bankers Realty, and moving back out to California. I then had twins, right? So I have a son. He's my favorite son. It's pretty easy because he's my only son, So you're my favorite son, dude. And I have twin daughters as well. So coming back out here when we did, trying to get back into the market. So once dollars leave California, they're not the same dollars that come back, and I tell buyers and sellers that too. So you got to buy here.
Yeah.
But when we came back, I've got to get into this, but I can't drain the account in doing so. So I hooked up with my title rep, and he just gave me a list of, I gave him some criteria, and I went door knocking every day after work, and none of them were in my neighborhood. Right. So one of the seminars I was at, the guy says, if there's no deals in your backyard, look in someone else's. Right. So I went down to Long Beach. There was an area in Long Beach where the market, we ran into a guy, he was buying condos at the time, and whatever he could, anything under 100,000, he was buying them, and they were there.
We had real estate under.
It was in 2002, and it was crazy. And this guy was buying. I can't imagine what he amassed. But I was down there door knocking, and I picked up several deals just door knocking. And I realized, sometimes I would say no, and they weren't saying no to me.
Yeah,
they were saying no to themselves. So I didn't talk to them at the right day at the right time.
That's right.
So I had to learn not to take that personal.
Love that. Yeah.
I had to learn that it had nothing, them saying no, it had nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
Right. Because sometimes I went back like a week later and knocked on their door to try again. Sorry, somebody else came after you did, and we decided to go on. So I seated them. Right. So it wasn't that they said no to me. I wasn't at the right time. And so I learned that. And so then I learned how to follow up. Right. I hadn't been to KW yet, so I didn't understand the millionaire mindset and all this, Yeah. So then I got into, I started looking, I was driving around and I saw these advertisements on telephone poles, and it was about these raves and concerts in LA. And I pulled over to take the number down, and this girl walks up and hands me a postcard. And I look at this postcard, as cheap as it was. Hey, where'd you get this made? She says, oh, there's a warehouse over here down off Figueroa and whatever it was.
Yeah.
She said they make them for like 22 cents a piece.
22 cents a piece. Yeah.
And I said, that's color? She said, yeah. She said, black and white, it's 13 cents.
Wow.
So I went over there and I ordered thousands upon thousands of postcards, because I didn't go to Starbucks. I didn't buy pizzas. And I just started saving my money, and I would send out those postcards. And the thing is when we started our discount brokerage, it exploded, because we would have to be in town when we would send out postcards, because the phone would ring.
Yeah.
So anyone that says, postcards don't work, the old flyers don't work, they do. You just have to be consistent. You find a farm area, the easiest farm area, going back to the roots, is you see a sign go up, keep it simple. Make 300 flyers and go 2 or 3 streets on both sides of that sign. I mean, that's always proven to be a good strategy.
Yeah.
That sign goes up, somebody else is going to sell.
Yeah.
Are you going to be the first realtor to do that? And I did that over here in Torrance in a couple areas. And I got phone calls from realtors.
Yeah.
I got phone calls. They would call me up from other offices and ask me.
Louis, you said something that's very valid, because yesterday on our team meeting, we were talking about the stats. Every month we go over the stats of the month prior.
Yeah.
And we just look at the trajectory of all of the different cities, right? And I always tell agents, look at the trend. Look at the cities that there's a lot of turnover, meaning there's a lot of properties that are coming on the market, because that's going to give you an opportunity to pick up a listing, but more so, it gives you an opportunity to really showcase who you are there, because the more you're there visually, people are going to know you eventually, right? But I like what you said also about the postcards, right? I know sometimes it's difficult, but you got to commit to it, right? Because it's a business that you're running. You got to treat it like a business. There's sometimes a carrying cost to that, right? And I tell agents, look, if you can do one thing, is do open houses consistently, or farm a neighborhood that you want to, eventually penetrate into. But you got to do something that is going to attract views on you, right? And try to find a place that does cheap
postcards. I don't know if they're still in existence now with all the social media and everything. But it was interesting, and my biggest deals that I did in residential, my biggest deals came from open houses.
Yeah.
Right. So I was holding an open house. I caught the buyer, right? And then I was selling the house. The buyer bought it. So I captured the seller when they moved. And then the seller moves, and then they realized, oh, we got a house without a pool, so now we want a pool. So then I sold that house, captured the purchase of their next one, And then the buyer of their previous house said, we want to move too. So, and that was all from one open house.
That's right.
That was that relationship that I was able to nurture over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
You know, when I came to Keller Williams, I became also, I started doing, I was an instructor for, I was a GRI instructor. So I taught the buyer's course. I was a CRS instructor. So I taught the business marketing sales course.
Yeah.
And so when I would travel with CRS, I would go to these towns and I'm talking to these top producers, these top 3% of the producers in the nation.
Yeah.
And I'd say, okay, you got to bring me your best marketing, you know, and show me what you got. And they get up there and they pitch. And I would learn so much from these people from different markets, what they've tried, what they've tested, and what really worked. And one of the guys at Family Reunion, he validated it. He validated it 100% about what we just said. And he said, my first year, I did 500 open houses.
Wow.
Can you imagine? Just think about that number.
Yeah, 500.
500 open houses. He's a top producer, right? And I was like, holy smoke. I mean, he's got me beat. I mean, I used to knock on a lot of doors. You know, that's how I got my start. You know, that's what really gave me my foundation for listings and finding buyers, distressed properties. And they'd say, oh yeah, well, you know, we're working out with the bank, but my sister, she's looking for a house, you know, because I learned before I left, I would always ask, oh, since you're not willing to use my service today, so, you know, but I enjoy talking to you, is there someone else, you know, that might could use my service, you know? And if there is, you know, if you could refer them to me.
I always say, ask for the order.
That's it. That's it. You know?
Always ask for the order.
And I said it, you know, just got to be in such a humble way about it.
Yeah.
You know, make yourself vulnerable. You know, say, hey, I'm asking you for the business, you know, it's to feed me and my family. You know, I wouldn't go into all that, but you got to feel like, hey, you know, you got to let these people know I'm human. I'm out here working. I'm not begging you. I'm just saying, this is what I do for a living, you know.
Yeah.
It's no different than anybody else, you know, trying to, you know, gardener or anyone else trying to, you know, hey, if you need your yard cut, you know, your lawn taken care of, let me know.
Yeah. So, yeah, good stuff. Really good stuff. So going back to what you were saying, so what was really your niche in real estate? You know, what got that momentum going where you started seeing a consistent flow of deals closing for you?
So I was at a seminar, and this guy's name was Joel Roberts. Joel Roberts ended up being one of my mentors. And this here wasn't to do with real estate. This was more about mindset and conditioning, things like that.
Yeah.
And, you know, there's about 4,000 people I'll never forget. And somehow or another, I ended up on stage with Joel Roberts, you know, and I was like, that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah.
And he said, yes, what do you do? You know, and at the time I was worked out, ran and all that stuff. He says, look like you played for the NFL. And I was like, no. I said, I'm in real estate. And he says, oh, well, tell me about it, right? And it was marketing. It was about marketing.
Yeah.
And he said, I said, well, you know, I'll find a buyer or a seller, and, you know, through marketing, and I'll talk to them. He says, well, how many of these buyers or sellers do you talk to? I said, well, just one at a time. You know, I go to the house, or I'll meet them at the office or something. He says, why can't you talk to 1,000 at a time? What do you mean? He says, well, if you're talking to one person and you're pitching to them about buying a house or an investment property, why can't you talk to everybody in here about it, buying an investment property from you? And then,
holy.
Right? And then the people in the crowd just went wild, man.
Yeah.
And it was like, holy crap, he's right.
He's right. Yeah.
You know, so when you put on a buyer seminar, I believe Chris had one last week, right?
That's right. Yeah.
See, people, the energy of others will motivate you.
Right.
Right. It's that fear of missing out. And that's what I learned. When we would pull up to a house, I would go out a week or two early and scout out the properties, make sure they met the criteria of the investment, the numbers, everything. Arizona, Texas, Oklahoma, California, in the high desert area. And when I would go out there, I'd talk to the realtor saying, hey, we're gonna have some people come through for these, you know, we're gonna show them. And I'd pull up with 3 15-passenger vans on a Saturday morning and say, okay, we're here. And these people would come out of their house in their underwear going, holy smoke. And we would write an offer. But it was because Joel told me it's the same presentation.
That's right.
It's the same. If I can have this room here filled with buyers, that motivation is going to, right?
Yeah.
Somebody's going to say, I'll take that.
Yeah.
And other people will.
You validated something for me too, because it's something that I talk with Chris. And by the way, Chris Rivera is one of our in-house lenders here at the office, and he loves it. He loves to be in front of clients pitching his stuff because one, he's a razor sharp lender,
Yep.
he knows his
Yep.
craft, he's been in it for a very long time. Leverage yourself
Yep.
by utilizing other people, right? Because imagine if you leverage the office,
Yep.
right? You got the training room here as an example,
Yep.
and have 50 potential
Yep.
buyers,
Yep.
and out of those 50, 15 of them are qualified to buy something.
Yep.
That's 15 potential transactions
Yep.
that you can do. Imagine if you do these seminars once a quarter.
Yeah.
15, 15, 15, 15 is,
Yeah.
that's good money.
Yeah, we would do 2 a month. I would do 2 a month.
Okay.
I did one at the Sizzler here on Sepulveda, which is
no longer there.
and then I did one out in Corona.
Amazing.
And I would do them every other week. And
Yeah.
we would usually at the Sizzler events, we'd have 20 to I'd say 20 people, probably on the high side.
Yeah.
But then we would have one. I'd do them at the Radisson. I'd do one a month at the Radisson Hotel by LAX.
Yeah.
And at that one, we'd have 70, 80 people.
Yeah.
And one night, a guy showed up, and it was like 3 people showed up. And, well, he was the first one, and he said, "Man, it doesn't look like many people are going to come." I said, "Well, looks like you're going to get the best presentation of your life, dude."
That's right.
Right. So,
yeah.
so I had to once again change his TFAR. Right.
Yeah.
I had to shift his mind. He's thinking if this place isn't full, it's not worth it. I'm saying, no, dude, you're about to get some value here. They're missing out, not
That's
you.
right.
And he just sat there and looked at me, like, wow. Right? But I had to change that mindset. That was my opportunity to tell him.
He had the golden ticket.
Yeah. Right. So
that's amazing. Yeah, it's so true. And it's something that I've been, talking to some of the agents that do flips.
Yeah.
And I've wanted to do for the longest time is put together like an investment club here.
Yep.
Get people that are interested, outside resources, right? Like hard money lenders, contractors, and just collaborate.
Yeah.
And bring all that, because we have a lot of agents that are out there hunting for opportunities.
Yeah.
But that also gives us an opportunity to see if there's a great property that we can, buy, or syndications and all that stuff. So we definitely need to talk a little bit more about that and see what we can create here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Last weekend, I went to a wealth seminar.
Yeah.
Here at LAX.
Oh yeah, I saw it. Yeah.
And two of the guys that got up there, they talked about that they call for wholesale. They've done in 2 years. So this is the trend. What I learned was zeros and fives are the key indicators for the economy. 0 years are down years, 5 years are the peaks, right?
Yeah.
And what my mentor told me was the only time that was disrupted was World War II. It's because 45 was still down because they were coming back from the war.
Right.
But then I took the interest rate chart that I have for every quarter that the interest rates have gone up over the last 50 years, 60 years, and I can look at it and see what's happening. And then when I talked to my buddy Sam, his dad owns the first Korean bank that came to the United States. And he says, we don't, he and I would talk. It was funny because Sam, Chris, and our sons all played soccer together.
Amazing.
Right. And they were 8, 9, 10 years old.
Yeah.
But what Sam would tell me, he says, Louis, you guys look at 3, 5 years out. He says, we look at 100 years. He says, when we have our bank meetings, we're projecting housing. We're projecting opportunities for 100 years. Holy shit, dude, I can't help you there. Right. But it was a mind shift. Right.
Yeah.
It was to how do you look at the market and what it's doing? So when I started flipping properties, doing rehabs, I was told it's not the problem. Most agents make the mistake is they say, okay, we can buy the house this month. We can rehab it for a month. I always say add 30% to the price and the time. You always add 30% to whatever your contractor or the vendor is going to tell you as a buffer. And then they say, okay, so then in 90 days, we should be able to put the house on the market. It should be here. And I say, whatever you see there, go 6 months out. Right. Whatever the market trend, you mentioned trend earlier, right? If that trend, you see the market's going down, a half a point or a point every month, you project 6 months out, and that's your projection.
That's right.
If it still makes sense going into it at that point, see a 6%, 8% decline 9 months from now, if the numbers still crunch, then you do it. But if you're relying on today's numbers 4 months from now, All it takes is a war.
Yeah.
Oil prices went up in the last week. Unemployment rate's 4.4% this morning. Doesn't matter. The market still moves, right?
Yeah.
Death, divorce, upsell, downsell, relocation. That's 40% of the market that will always move. So you have to enjoy that ride. That's the part where you have to look at. And as an investor, as a rehabber, that's what you look for.
Right. Well, they say two things: real estate and money never sleep.
That's it. That's it.
So what last takeaway can you give the audience as we close out the session?
So I left KW once. I'm glad to be back.
Yes.
There's a lot of resources here. I met a lot of great people. There are a lot of great functions, a lot of breakout sessions there. And it just validates that the company is, it's grown a lot since I left. I can, just all the resources that are here. And just take advantage of them. If nothing else, the training. It's funny because since I left, everybody that come to me tell me they wanted to go into real estate, I tell, go to Keller Williams. Why do you tell me to go to Keller Williams? Because they have the best training, resources, and support of all brokerages I've ever come across. And I've done deals all across the country.
Yeah.
And I tell people, go to Keller Williams. And it's funny, people don't go to Keller Williams and then they'll call me up, hey man, can you help me with a contract? I'm like, no. I don't want your broker calling me telling me I screwed up.
Yeah.
So, but I tell people.
Yeah. What's so funny, Louis, is when, because you just joined us. And when I heard that you were on the list to go to family reunion, it's like, wait a minute, it's very rare and far and few that we get new agents that are joining the company, right? Not necessarily brand new agents, but agents in general. They don't necessarily go to, mega camp and family reunion. They got to get their feet wet, but you were all in and saw the value of what KW had.
And I'm glad you brought that up before we close. The value that I got out of that, I went for very specific reasons and I got everything that I wanted. I wanted a quality website, right? I wanted the best of the best website. I met one of the top producing agents at Keller Williams. He says, this is the website I use. They were there. They were there. I wanted the best marketing brands. They were there, right? It took, yes, the office says, here's but you actually got to go and talk and see these people and touch the signs and you,
that's right.
You didn't have to visualize. You can now see it. And that's the way I am, right?
Yeah.
And as long as I'm validated with what I'm doing, I'm all in.
Yeah.
So
awesome.
I've got a few more things to do and then it's ready to rock and roll.
Louis,
it's been a pleasure, man.
Thank you, my man. I really appreciate you coming in and just having a chat.
Yeah, thanks.
And just providing us with some huge value and nuggets. So thanks again for doing this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Much appreciated. Yeah. And that concludes today's Producers Club. Thanks, everyone. Awesome.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks. Awesome. That's it.
That's it.